Hello, fairy finders and fairy seekers. Welcome to FairieQuest and another episode, part 4 in fact, of Real Fairies in Real Photos at the High Bridge Disc Golf Course Trail in Eldora, Iowa at the Memorial Park. As I said, this is part number 4 and I still have 51 photos to go through. Let me know in the comments below if you would like me to give High Bridge Disc Golf Course Trail a break and move on to a different location for a little while and come back to it, or if you would like to see me finish it off. It could be another 4 or 5 videos depending on how many fairies we find in the photos. This video we have 8 photos that I used, and there are, I believe, 17 fairies in these 8 photos. So before we get started, pull out that magic wand of yours and zap that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and consider supporting this channel using the link in the description box below. Another link has magically appeared in the box below too that you might want to take a look at. Okay, let's see what fairies showed up in these photos. I love it when fairies, F-A-I-R-I-E-S, come into view in the photos. This fairy, F-A-I-R-Y, is sitting down and seems to be examining his foot. We can see that he is looking down and his hand is over top of his foot. We can see wings, an ear, hair, face, though not well defined, his upper torso, one arm and hand, and one full leg and foot. There is a thin branch with leaves over the top of his head, blocking out part of his hair. This is a phenomenal photo. For those who are not a fan of reptiles, this might be a frame to skip. We have a snake here who has formed himself from the light. We don't have all of this snake as he is just coming into the photo on the right side, so the rest of him is either not formed yet or is beyond the scope of this photo. Fairies of all different species use the sunlight in this way, so I always look at the sunny spots to make sure I don't miss anything. I did not, however, expect to discover a snake. This fairy stood out to me in the photo, and I actually laughed out loud when I saw him. He is so adorable, peeking out from behind the dried leaf. We can see his face with eyes, nose and mouth, and even a bit of his neck. We can also see 2 black tufts of hair on each side of his forehead. The only other part of him that is not hidden behind the leaf is one leg. This leg is very thin and makes me wonder what the rest of him looks like. Another fairy, F-A-I-R-Y. This makes 2 for this video so far. This one reminds me a bit of a bat because of the shape of the wing. We can see a pointed ear, eyes, one arm which is bent behind the back, and it looks like something is being held in the hand. I cannot tell where the rest of the body is unless, as many of the fairies, this one is just coming into our realm and has only made it halfway. We can see this fairy from the waist up. What an interesting fairy being this one is. I can't even venture a guess as to what species we are seeing here. She is wearing a pointed hat and her body seems to also be pointed. We see her face, eyes and part of her mouth, and it almost looks like she is eating something. Her arm is bent at the elbow. There is more to her body than the point we see, but it is behind the leaf, so it is hard to know what she really looks like. Here we have a fairy that has limbs kind of like a dinosaur mixed with a more human-like face. We can see an eyebrow, both eyes, a nose, and an ear. We can also see one arm with a black claw showing, and one leg and foot. It is the squareness of the limbs that makes me think dinosaur. He has hidden himself under a leaf. The leaf is curled enough to cup his head. He is actually pretty cute. It is this fairy's flesh-colored face that allowed me to find him in this photo. We can't see all of his face as he appears to have pressed it up against the downed tree, but we can still see eyebrows, both eyes, which look to be closed, his nose, and where his chin is. He is wearing a green hat and cape. We can't see his body clearly, but he appears to be dressed in black beneath the green cape. A bit blurry due to the distance away from my camera, we can see this fairy making its way on a path within the leaves. We see a hat and possibly some hair, though it is hard to tell as this fairy is all one color in its blending. The face is a bit distorted due to the distance, but we can see eyes and a mouth for sure. Its arms are outstretched and one hand is on the small branch. We can also see the upper torso and shirt of this fairy. The rest of it is hiding behind the leaves. We have a peeking fairy here, just on the left edge of the photo. We can see the top of his head, one ear, both eyes, and part of his nose. The lower part of his face is hidden by the downed tree he is hiding behind. The photo above really does not do him justice, as he is quite blurred in it, but he's another cute one. This fairy reminds me a bit of Yoda from Star Wars. We can see a round head with ears on either side. One eye is clear, but the other eye is being covered with a thin branch. The nose is there as well. His lips are pursed as though he is whistling. Perhaps he is warning someone of my presence. This is all we can see of this fairy. If his body is here and not still in another dimension, it is hidden behind the leaves. Here is another example of a fairy coming into our dimension through a leaf. We can see a head with eyes, nose, and mouth open in an O as though surprised by my presence. There is also one hand or paw with 3 claws. The leaves underneath the green leaf are not part of this fairy. This fairy is currently part of the green leaf with its lower half still somewhere else. This fairy is a little cutie, but you have to look close to not be fooled by him. We see him in profile, and he kind of resembles a mouse with a protruding nose. We can also see one eye and one ear. It is obvious that his back is toward us due to the positioning of his head, but down below the stick looks like feet. This almost had me. I knew there was a fairy here, but I wasn't seeing him right at first. He looks like a baby. Maybe the feet belong to someone that is holding him, whom we can't see. It looks like this fairy didn't care if we spotted her or not. She is very laid back with her little legs and feet crossed. We can also see 2 dark eyes and what appears to be 2 floppy ears. Her little hand is up to her mouth, either eating or covering it so that she does not make any noise to alert me to her presence. She is so adorable. It really is a good thing that I don't see these fairies in person because I would find it very hard to keep myself from picking them up. Do you see the cat in this photo? This is not the first cat I have found, but it is the clearest. Its coloring and the color of 2 of the leaves make this cat look like it has floppy fins like a fish. We cannot see its feet, but we can see both ears, both eyes, and the nose. It is looking back over its shoulder. What cool coloring too, black and yellow. So if you were wondering if there are animals in this tiny world too, the answer is yes. I don't get them in photos often, but they do exist. Well, look at this. It looks like we had some very curious young fairies wanting to get a peek at the giant, to them, lady with the camera. There are 5 of them that we can see peeking over this downed tree. They look like varied species of fairies too. It's nice to see them all getting along and playing together. It is rare that I get this many fairies in one small area together. This fairy might be a bit harder to see, but go back and forth between the larger photo and the cropped one above, and you'll see her. She has blonde hair and a fancy hat. We can see her face in profile, though not clearly. She has one arm up as though waving and the other hanging by her side. She is stepping forward with one leg. I think she might be hollering at someone as her mouth is open and she's waving at the same time. I have saved the oddest one for last in this video. First, there is a woman wearing a long coat with a fur hood walking. She seems to be carrying a staff or wand. We can see her face as she looks over her shoulder at me. Her right cheek is hidden by the fur of the hood. Her hair is in a bun. She looks like royalty. Behind her, on the downed tree, is a head. We can see the pale face clearly and the hair piled on top of the head. I cannot explain this photo, but had to share it with you.